Alright, what's up y'all, it's LakerFan here. As you're about to title today's video, we're clearly here to talk about the badge tiering system in NBA 2K23, and that it really, in my true opinion, was a bad way of executing on this tier system. Now, I do love the idea of the tier system. In case you guys are new to the channel or didn't really hear me for the late 2K22 content, I was vouching for this tier system so hard. But what I wanted was one that wasn't based on build height. I wanted things where Limitless Takeoff, Posterizer, Slithery were all in tier 3 because they're good finishing badges, period. Same with things like Agent 3 as well, where it's for fading three-pointers. It's obvious it's going to be good. Same with things like Deadeye, Blinders, Limitless, stuff like that. They did execute on decently because they understood that it's going to be elite at all different levels. So things like Deadeye and Limitless have been tier 3 for no matter what your build is. Blinders, however, can drop to tier 2 if you make it a different build, like super tall. Agent 3 also can drop down to tier 1 if you make it super tall. It's actually tier 3 if you're pretty short, like 6'1" type builds and stuff like that. And where this really shines through the most as really bad way of glaring through is the defense. And what I really mean to specify in this video is the fact that the 6'9s utilize this badge tiering system so ridiculously to become the most overpowered build in the game at multiple different levels. And this is my exact build I run for Team Pro-Am. It's because I just find it most convenient to run something like this where it's going to be competitively usable. And I can really extremely use that versatility. A lot of those 5-out builds that you see in Pro-Am, they're maybe 6'8" and they have really bad defense. Why? Well, because at 6'8", your glove is going to move up a tier, your challenger and clamps and interceptor are going to move up a tier. And you may ask yourself why that's the case, but there's actually a chart that my boy JP right here made from day one of the game. It's so fire. I'm so glad he made something like this. It helped me a lot with my build videos early on in the year. But if you take yourself down to the defensive tier list right here, you can see from day one this is identified. So I know squint a little bit or zoom in, whatever you need to do. As you can see, it's going to be a tough one to see. But Challenger, Clamps, Glove, and Interceptor are the bottom 4 defensive badges right here. And if you scroll over here, you can see these are the 6'8s and 6'9s. So red means tier 3, yellow means tier 2, and green means tier 1. Long story short, between 6'8 to 6'9, there are multiple that go from tier 3 to tier 2, also one that goes from tier 2 to tier 1. So we have Glove, Clamps, and Challenger are all one level higher as far as running it from a 6'8 to a 6'9. And the problem with that is the fact that you have to run 10 points between tier 1 and tier 2. Now, I love that idea for the idea of maybe if we were talking about the system that I was talking about from 2K22 offseason, where I was saying things like maybe Glove, Interceptor, Clamp, stuff like that should be tier 3 no matter what, or even like Anchor, etc. And make people run badges like ankle braces or off-ball pest or things like that of that nature. And they did a pretty good job at that, I must say too. The fact that the tier 1s are generally pretty bad badges is a pretty good thing. But again, then we even have things like Glove in tier 1 for a 6'9", whereas at a 6'7", this will be like all the way up to a tier 3. So I just am not a big fan of the whole height to tier system. I would have loved if it was just a tier system purely based off the power of the badge alone. Things like Rebound Chaser, obviously a great badge. What I really would reference if 2K is listening to this video by any chance is the tier list videos. So for instance, when I make tier list videos, things like Glove and Interceptor or Rebound Chaser, Anchor, stuff like that, they're always going to be top tier badges. And actually, for the best example on this, we have the finishing category. So we have things like, let's say, Slithery or Acrobat, Giant Slayer, stuff like that, that are in the tier 1. And my main focus right here is Slithery. And then you can compare it to the tier 2. We have Aerial Wizard of all things in tier 2. And then I know this is probably bad execution on the game's part. They probably meant for Bully to be way more dominant than it is. But the fact that this is a tier 3 for every single build, no matter what your height is crazy, bro. That's insane. I probably wouldn't even run this badge if it was a tier 2, to be honest with you. Like, that's just the truth. But yeah, simply put, the fact that Slithery of all things is a tier 1 badge and then Aerial Wizard is a tier 2, that should never happen. Never ever. So things like Slithery 100% should just be tier 3 no matter what the build height is or anything like that. Same with Limitless Takeoff. It would lead to way more build diversity. It would lead to people making anything imaginable between 6'2 and 6'7 this year. Because if we're going to be completely honest, boy oh boy, was that an extinct height this year. 6'2 to 6'5. Most people did not make builds like that. It made 100% sense to go 6'1 because it gives you more attribute points for some weird reason too. That was another thing that was broken in this builder as well. This is the fact that a 6'1 compared to a 6'2, you guys can check it if you want to. You can copy all the exact same attribute ratings from a 6'1 to a 6'2. The 6'1s just have more attribute points, like significantly more. I'm talking the difference between like 15 acceleration and 10 speed just if you copy and paste the builds against each other. It's ridiculous. So 6'1 was the absolute meta height as far as small guards go, and anything past that, 6'2, 6'3, sure 6'3 sometimes are used for comp pro-am shooting guards. Me personally, I'd prefer to have 2 6'1s on the court when it comes to the PG and the shooting guard. You're actually going to see that moving forward when we get back into the comp pro-am scene ourselves. But 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", all trash if you ask me. 6'6" was maybe somewhat reasonable to run as a pure lockdown just for more speed. But generally, you were seeing anywhere between 6'1" and then jump all the way to 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" as the only viable heights in this game, and after that, maybe some big men scattered in there. And then also, to come back out to this one right here, we have some really weird things in this game. So what I really want to highlight, and first and foremost, is look for anything that has red and green right next to each other, because that means there is no pass-off between a Tier 1 and a Tier 3. So we have things like Mismatch Expert most highlighted right here, or Dimer as well. So as you can see, for a 6'9", Dimer is Tier 1. For a 6'10", Dimer is Tier 3. So that makes it significantly impossible to run like a point center type build or anything like that. And that's what I assume their intention or their goal was for that matter too. But either way, then we also have things like, obviously, like I said as well, Clamp Breaker, that's going to go from a Tier 3 to a Tier 1. So if you are a 6'10 plus, you get it in Tier 1, but if you're 6'9 and below, you get it Tier 3. I don't know why there's no intermediate in this. Why is there no Tier 2 with this stuff? If it's all height sorted, why is there ever a world where it doesn't have a yellow on it? I just don't really understand that at all. Then we also have multiple things in that category, like for instance, Handles for Days drops all the way down to a Tier 1, Killer Combos drops all the way down to a Tier 1 from Tier 3, and again, it's that 6'9", 6'10 threshold. While I do understand though, obviously the fact that 6'10s can get Clamp Breaker and Tier 1, it's still only going to be silver, so it's not exactly worth it in the first place. And by that I mean to just drop off all the way from a 6'10 from a 6'9 just for the fact that you can get things like Clamp Breaker, Handles for Days, and Tier 1. It is a cool idea for like a point center type build. 6'10 is the only one that's viable for that though, and the problem is at 6'10 they had all types of different height capped animations and stuff too, which is a problem in itself as well. I think that stuff needs to get out of here, bro. It needs to be ratings that in the builder just caps itself. I mean, the fact that I can even load up a 6'10 right now, and we'll do that real quick. I'll segue back to this whole discussion with the chart in just a second. But just keep in mind, while we're on the 6'9 right here, clamps is achievable at 86 perimeter defense, obviously, right? So the thing is with this, if we go to a 6'10, minimum weight type stuff like that, so the thing is, and it's not a huge deal because they can only get it on bronze, but 6'10s would be able to achieve clamps by that logic, but they just can't because it's height capped for some stupid reason. Must be 6'9 or shorter. Meanwhile, this build right here, the 6'10, at many different levels could still get bronze clamps if it wanted to. It's just that the 2K implemented the height capping of certain badges and animations and stuff like that. I think it's really dumb. I don't like that stuff at all, in my personal opinion. And it's really weird because they didn't do that for very many things. They really just did it for, as you can see, ankle breaker, no shooting badges, and then no finishing either. I just don't understand why clamps of all things had to be taken out of the game, and especially like ankle breaker too. Like this badge wasn't even that good. And who cares? That's the fun in the game. Making a 7-footer with like silver ankle breaker or something like that. And yeah, I get it, it's not going to be very realistic or fun, or like fun to deal with on defense, but who cares? The badge wasn't even that good. Why not just let people get this stuff if their ball handle can even go that high? And for that matter too, I believe like if we're going into super crazy categories as far as playmaking goes, like I think you need 80 ball handle to get Hall of Fame Clamp Breaker anyway, so anything past 6'10 for that matter would already be down to like gold, silver, stuff like that. 7-footers would be like even worse as well. I just think 2K, you did a good enough job at putting rating caps for certain heights. Like the fact that 6'10s versus 6'11s get like significantly different perimeter defense and ball handle ratings in the first place, as you can see, that just makes it so much more reasonable for like not having height capped things in the game. I just think you did a good enough job at putting rating caps on these builds in the first place. But now, back to that chart real quick. So it's kind of funny, my first impression on this whole tier system and how it worked, and I think I was actually the first person in that community day stuff to figure this out too, because I started spreading the word to everybody else there as well, how this was working, and Rebound Chaser was the example that I found very easily, and I could utilize this to explain to everybody there as well. So as you can see, Rebound Chaser, again, squint really hard. I hope you guys can see this pretty good in the video. I really hope I'm not trolling every part I come to this, but anyway, Rebound Chaser for 6'6 builds was tier 1, 6'7 is tier 2, and then 6'8 is tier 3 and up, and anything above 6'8 is tier 3, anything below 6'6 is tier 1. That was my best example of this being utilized, and I don't know if I like that, to be honest. I don't know if I like the fact that 6'6 builds can get Rebound Chaser for literally 4 badge points on Hall of Fame, whereas a tier 3, like Hall of Fame Rebound Chaser 6'8 and above, needs 8 points to run it. I just think the badge itself should be known as something that's going to be super elite for any type of build and should not be like cheesed by height or anything like that, because that's how you get things like this where people found the absolute like just most cheese hype possible, the 6.9s, where you can get everything in a really, really fashionable way, where you can see every important defensive badge is tier 1, tier 2. And with the system being the way that it is, the fact that you have to put 10 points minimum into tier 1, tier 2 before you can unlock a tier 3, it made 6.9s that much more viable. Not to mention the jump shot animations you can equip with it, the dribble animations you can equip with it, all because of stupid height cap things, whether it's animations or the badge tier, as you can see. Now, let's segue over to one more different category right here. Let's talk about some badges that were known as that exactly and see if it creates good game balancing. So, as you can see, anything that is red all the way across the board or anything that is green all the way across the board is something that 2K either deems a really great badge or a really bad badge. So we have things like Giant Slayer, that's tier 1 for every single build. It's funny that of all badges that are height capped, it's not this, where it's going to be tier 3 for a super small build, but then tier 1 for a super tall build. It's really stupid if you ask me, but hey. Whereas you can find its next door neighbor, Masher, which is based on height. And as you can see, for the taller builds, 6'11 plus, it's tier 3. Anything from 6'6 to 6'10 is tier 2, and then anything 6'5 and below was tier 1. I don't understand why it's not the opposite. I don't know why Giant Slayer isn't a tier 3 for anything that's like 5'7 all the way up to like 6'2 or 6'1, 6'3, something like that, and then maybe yellow in these categories as well. I just don't really get that stuff. But anyway, to talk about some badges that were seen as elite badges no matter what the height is, we have things like Posterizer, where as you can see, if you follow this line right here, it's only tier 3 or tier 2. So no matter how tall you went with it, it is still a tier 2 badge, but anything 6'11 and above gets it tier 2, anything 6'10 and below gets it tier 3. Same kind of applies to things like Limitless Takeoff and Slithery, but as you can see, once again, that's where you reach that 6'9 threshold, and boom, there it is, tier 1, tier 2, right at the cutoff, perfectly. I mean, and again, the Slithery, no transition at all, no tier 2 anywhere on this list. It goes straight from tier 3 to tier 1, and it's right at that 6'9 height cap as well. So for the shooting and playmaking, we get a little bit more into the nitty gritty with it, where as you can see, you get a lot more red bars all the way across the line. So for shooting, we obviously have Deadeye and Limitless are tier 3 no matter what the build is, whereas Blinders and Agent 3, it kind of decelerates as far as like how hard it is to get with on the build. And the 6.8s actually get another really good set of height caps. So I would say 6.9 is significantly the best, but 6.8s can still get pretty good. So for instance, things like Agent 3 is where the exact cutoff is for the tier 3 to the tier 2. And as you can see, boom, that makes it so you don't have to run. That makes it so you can like have about 18 shooting badges and just get things like Limitless and Agent. If it were the case where it had to be a tier 3, and let's say like a 6'7 and a 6'6 and a 6'5, where it has to be tier 3 for Agent, that's going to make it way harder on your build to get the shooting badge points. But again, that's where the 6'8s and the 6'9s eat off of. Same with defense. I believe, let's see where the 6'8 cutoff is, and there it is, boom. So the 6'7 to 6'8 cutoff right here is going to be Glove and Interceptor. So you can get both those in tier 2, which, yes, I understand it's only 2 less badge points of investment. Whether it's bronze on tier 1, like that's 1 point. If it's bronze on tier 2, that's 3 points. I do understand that's like a whole like only 2-point difference between these two. But the fact that you can use Glove and Interceptor as your tier 2 badge points, or tier 1, tier 2 combination of the 10 points you have to spend, then you can invest into things like Challenger and Clamps in tier 3. That makes a 6'8 lock so much more easy to run than a 6'7, where a 6'7, as you can see, is a true peer lock necessity. You can't run anything as a lock unless you are going straight up full into defense, because it forces you to run things like Challenger, Glove, Interceptor, and Clamps all in the tier 3 for a total of like, on Hall of Fame level, I think 8 times 4, so that's like 32 badge points right there. And then you have a core badge somewhere in there to drop off 8, so that's like now 24 total badge points. But now, because it's 24 badge points and you didn't have anything between these 4 to be spent anywhere between tier 1 and tier 2, now you're looking at a literal set of 32 defensive badge points plus a core, because you have to run 10 more. So again, I was just talking about the whole 32 defense, but you can core badge one of them, so it puts it like 24. So really you need 34 defense to be able to run everything between Challenger, Glove, Interceptor, and Clamps on tier 3, and then you have to fill in with like a couple badge points between tier 1 and tier 2 to get up to 10 points, which is probably gonna be something like Chase Down Artist, maybe some Box Out Beast, something like that, Pick Dodger, who knows. But yeah, so for our general consensus playmaking badges of what the game seemed like pretty reasonable for everybody to have the same thing, it's actually funny. The one thing that is the true same thing, or there's maybe like 4 of them, so we'll go over that. So Quick First Step is the same badge tier for every build no matter what. It is tier 2 regardless of your height. And that's really weird to me too. I mean, that's kind of interesting. Like, you would think a smaller build would have to have that in tier 3 by this logic that the game went, and maybe a taller build could get it in tier 1, like a 7'3", 7'2", 7'1", 7-footer, stuff like that. But anyway, quick first step, like I said, was tier 2 all across the board. Another playmaking badge that was tier 1 all across the board is special delivery, so that's an obvious one that they just deemed was going to be bad, period. Simple as that. Things like floor general were also tier 1 all the way across the board. And then ankle breaker, also tier 1 all the way across the board, but I don't know why it's even put right here because it's also just height capped at 6'10 plus. That was just on JP, but it's cool. I mean, this was made in literally September 8th, so he didn't put anything that was like height restricted entirely, where things like ankle breaker and clamps are obviously like the 6'10 plus can't even get them. But yeah, we could go on about this all day. I'm sure some of you guys watching this video would love for me to keep continuing and talking about stuff like this because it actually is pretty cool content to explain like how the game laid itself out and how we could kind of see this coming from the beginning of the game too. I mean, as soon as we got our hands on the game, 6'9s were pretty much deemed like the build for that matter. Now, me personally, I didn't see the whole 6'9 thing, but what I did see, and I'll give you a little bit of perspective on this stuff. So for the elite finishing badges, right, I didn't catch the 6'9 stuff right away off rip, but what I did notice was the 6'11s. So in case you guys remember, or don't remember, or don't even know who I am for that matter, sub the channel if you're new and you appreciate the content. But anyway, if you are new to the channel or not, it doesn't matter. My first build all year was a 6'11 Giannis build, and what I deemed was absolutely broken about it was this right here, the Elite 3 finishing badges. So between Posterizer, Slithery, and Limitless Takeoff, you were able to get Limitless Takeoff and Slithery in tier 1, and then Poster was the cutoff right there in tier 2. So that alone made these builds significantly better if you ask me as a slasher. Like the 6'11 slashers were elite as far as the finishing badge counts go. So if you wanted to be a driving dunker, to me the 6'11 was the way to go. Now, to be fair, in retrospect, the 6'9 is just the way to go because as you can see, it gets tier 1, tier 2 for Limitless Takeoff and Slithery and Poster, albeit even if it's tier 3, you can still core badge in that tier 3 slot as long as you have like 17 finishing badge points on gold. Simple as that. But again, if you wanted to be really budget with it, Poster, Slithery, and Limitless could all be ran on like a gold level for a combination of like 11 finishing badge points, which was crazy in comparison to like a 6'8 that gets all of them in tier 3, as you can see between Poster, Slithery, and Limitless Takeoff, all being tier 3. So yeah, while I didn't catch the 6'9 stuff from literally minute 1 of loading up the game in that early access 2K invitational, like 2K day I got, shout out to 2K for that too, as much as I am dogging on this badge system and stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a game that I enjoy playing 100%, and obviously I do appreciate them for bringing me out to that stuff. It got my channel popping from day one, and that was for sure. So I do appreciate that stuff. I'm not gonna ever sit here and like not tell you guys the truth just because of stuff like that, but I do definitely appreciate them for doing stuff like that. But anyway, if I had any advice to 2K, if you're watching this video, I highly suggest if we could do something like what's being done for Deadeye and Limitless Range right here. Badges that are really good, although we thought, I mean, Deadeye didn't end up being that great for whatever reason, just based off the game's programming, but things that you thought were going to be really good. I also think some flexibility on this stuff could be good, but then again, some people could get burned on their badges and stuff too, as far as their builds, so it's probably not a great idea. This needs to have a lot of great fine-tuning and testing, okay? So that we can end up with a good situation where people don't have to make brand new builds every season because you get flexible with it and change them and stuff like that, and so that we can get some good game balancing off rip and we'll end up with these 6'9s with the same exact build all the way across the board for everybody in the park. It just has to be like that, man. There's no build diversity this year as far as people's height. There is as far as how they upgrade it. I do understand that, but I'm not a big fan of the whole park scene this year just because of the fact that everybody is 6'9. And it's hard to avoid that, to be honest with you. It's hard to make anything other than a 6'9 when everything besides it is just bad, all the way down to 6'1. The only reason 6'1s are good is because they just get extra badge attribute points, I should say. They get extra attribute points compared to every other height in the game. And hey, I am available, 2K, if you guys want me to come out this summer and test stuff like this and like give my opinion and input on where these badges should be listed as far as the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, maybe even add another tier for that matter too. There's like, as far as, I mean, there's 4 levels of the badge points between bronze, silver, gold, and Hall of Fame. Could just make it four badge tier points, and I think that helps you spread things out a little bit. It's hard to go with like a, let me make an example. If I were to make a tier list video and things are either S tier, B tier, or D tier, that's extremely hard to do. Adding more tiers allows it to be more versatile as far as where things need to be placed. And the difference between a B tier and an A tier badge in my tier list is extremely big. Same with like, especially for that matter too, an S tier to a B tier. I mean, that's the exact difference we're making right here. We're going from a tier 3 to a tier 2, but there's only 3 systems to be had on. I think if you added at least 1 or maybe even 2 more and went to 5 or 4, it would be a lot better. Not to mention it would distinguish some differences between things like Limitless Range and like clutch shooter of all things. I mean, that's just, that's a significant difference right there. Or a better example would be slippery off ball, but you guys get what I'm saying. I think if we want good testing, good proper adjustments on height cap things as well, I think animation height caps need to go. I think the builder itself should account for that, and they already do for that matter. There's a lot of like dribble animations that 6'10 and above just can't get because they don't have a high enough ball handle. So instead of making height capped animations, just make the build get a reasonable amount of ball handle to the point where they can't even get that animation anyway. I just don't know why we're stopping 6'10s from getting certain things just because they're tall. If anything, that's what's fun about the build. It's the fact that it gets 80 ball handle at 6'10. That's what's cool about it. But it doesn't get half that stuff. It doesn't get clamps either. It doesn't get ankle breaker of all things. It's just dumb. So if you guys want my opinion on that, 2K, you obviously hear me talking on this stuff, and I am down to come out there this summer and go over things, or even this spring for that matter too. And I would really appreciate that again this year if you guys wanted to invite me to that. But either way, if you are just a viewer and watching this stuff, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed this like thorough conversation on stuff like this. I do love making content like this, albeit it's just me talking into a microphone with no camera on or anything like that, just staring at someone else's chart that they made for hours and hours and hours. Shout out to JP for this too. You should give him a follow on Twitter. This is a real cool dude, and I really do appreciate him. He's in my streams and stuff like that consistently as well, and I was trying to really help put him on in the beginning of the year too, retweeting all his stuff, making sure every one of you guys saw this stuff as well off rip, because at the end of the day I care about you guys too, and your money and your build investment and stuff like that too, and make sure that you get all the information you could possibly get, and shout out to JP for providing that as well. But anyway, I'm hoping that I'll be on the exact same thing next year's game as well when that time comes in the summer, and I can really get into the informational stuff with you guys. But as of right now, we're here to just recap, and at the end of the day, I do enjoy this year's game as well. It's just, I wish that badge tier system could have been executed a little bit better, same with the height caps, on the jumpers, the animations, stuff like that for the dribbling, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's all for video. Hope y'all enjoyed. If you made it to the end of the video, put JP in the comments, so it supports me all the way through. Anyway, other than that, feel free to leave some feedback. You can go ahead and drop a comment as far as whether you like this system, whether you dislike the system, if you agree with me, disagree with me, anything like that. But anyway, that's all for video. Hope y'all enjoyed. Take it easy, man. Peace.